Hey, I'm Coach Willis, and welcome to the one and only episode of Willy's Washers Workshop. You might recognize me as someone who looks somewhat like your teacher who hasn't taken a shower or brushed his hair for a few weeks, and that's only partly true. We've all been home stuck for a few weeks now, and we might be looking for some ways to maybe have a little bit of fun. And right now I'm coming to you from my garage during this stay-at-home order, this lockdown, trying to find something a little bit different to do. So I've got a little bit of scrap wood in my garage, and I want to try to find a project to do, something to keep me a little bit busy. Right now, Mr. Madsen's project is to make these Adirondack chairs so he can sit out on his front porch and drink some tea and read romance novels, I think. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a fun game that you can take out, drink some Mountain Dew, have some hot Cheetos, and have a good time. So let's talk about it. We're gonna make a little game called Washers today. And if you've never played Washers today, basically it's a square plywood box that players take turns trying to throw washers into some sort of a cup until one team or another gets up to 21 points. So I had a pretty good idea of like the size of the box and the plans and what I wanted to do, but I still looked online a little bit, and I still took a little bit of time, and I drew up a plan, and I wrote up a materials list and a size list, because it's always a good idea to do that before you start any project, so you have a pretty decent idea of what you want to do and what you need to do and what you need to have for a project. So before we get started looking at my list, let's make sure that I've got all the tools that I need, okay? So according to my list, I need a circular saw, and I've got one here. I need a drill and some bits. So I do have a cordless drill here. One unfortunate thing is that I left the batteries at school. So I have one battery here, and it's not a very good battery, and I don't know if it's gonna last. So I do have a corded drill as well, in case the battery gives out. I have an impact driver that I like to use to drive the screws that should run off the same battery if it lasts. But also I have a little screwdriver here that may be able to drive the screws. So hopefully between the combination of those, we'll be able to find something that'll work for us. I'm also going to use a utility knife, my tape measure. I'll use a square. I'll either use my speed square or my tri-square, or maybe a combination of the two. I may need to use something for a straight edge as well. And I'll probably use a couple of clamps when I go to start cutting things and putting things together. I've got a variety of different sizes of clamps here. I also got out a few tools for painting, because I thought we'd probably want to paint this box, because the lumber that I have here is all scrap lumber that's left over from the set from the play a few years ago. So it has some paint on it already. Not a big deal, but it wouldn't look great, but I thought we might as well paint it and make it all be the same color. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So according to my plans, I need two 16 by 16 pieces of plywood. And what I did is I just grabbed this chunk from the play. If you are trying to make this on your own, again, do not go out into your garage and start pulling out chunks of lumber or doing anything like this without your parents there or without your parents' permission, okay? But if you have parents around and you have parents' permission, this is probably something you could do on your own. They don't necessarily have to be 16-inch pieces. If you had 12-inch plywood, you could probably make this work, okay? But what I want to do is get my plywood marked out into two 16-inch long pieces. So I need my tape measure, a pencil, and a square. And I'll probably also use a straight edge. Like I said, we are in my garage, so you can hear my neighbors from time to time, just cruising by, having a good time. When you use the square, make sure you've got it held 90 degrees up there. My square didn't quite go all the way across, but I can use the straight edge here. Straight. All right. That will be the bottom, the two bottom pieces for the washer sets. Now I've got to basically take these 2x4s here and make a border that goes around the sides, okay? And according to my plan, I need 2 16-inch pieces and 2 13-inch pieces for each board, okay? And remember, I said I want to do 4 16-inch pieces, since there's 2 boxes, and 2 13-inch pieces. Let's take a look at why that is real quick here. If you put a 16-inch piece on each side, a 2x4 is 1.5 inches wide each way. So you'll notice then, if you look, how much space is left in between them is 13 inches. And that's why we want 13 inches to go in between here and here. And I'm not gonna make you watch me cut all 8 of these. So we'll go ahead and do our 2 13 inches here. One of those things, if we were in the shop at school, we'd probably use the table saw for our sheet material. And we'd probably use the power miter saw for our 2x4s. It's just easier, gives you more accurate, cleaner cuts, it's quicker. But we're all stuck at home right now, and I had a miter saw a few years ago and I gave it away when we moved, and just don't have, you know, some people have those tools at home, I guess some people don't. Some people don't have any tools at home, which isn't a big deal either. But if you do, you know, this is something that you might be able to do. So this is kind of where we're headed, right? We've got our box frame. We're going to do our drill holes next. But really, you know, our final product will be something like this. And I'm going to put a coffee can in the middle of mine. Some people put a piece of PVC, a plastic pipe, in the middle of theirs so they can stack one on top of another. But right now we're dealing with what we have. This is what I had at home. This Maxwell House coffee, it's, you know, you might not have coffee that's this good at your house. Maxwell House is one of the finest brands out there. You might only have a Folgers or, you know, a Starbucks or something like that that's not as fancy as Maxwell House. But you deal with what you've got. Drill bits. So I have this container of drill bits. It's a drill index. It has all different sizes of drill bits, and it would probably be pretty handy to drill a nice pilot hole here. But I've got this special drill bit that will drill a countersink or a counter bore as well as a pilot hole at the same time, that I'm going to try to use today when I drill these out, okay? Now, if you notice, I only need holes in the 16-inch boards, in the longer boards. There's no reason to put holes in these shorter boards. I'll also put holes up through the bottom into the short boards, okay? But in the 2x4, I'm going to put 2 holes here and 2 holes here to go into the other 2x4s. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hole in 3/4 of an inch from the edge, and then 1 inch down from the top and 1 inch up from the bottom. And I think that'll be just kind of a nice uniform place for them to be. Okay, I'm making sure that the ends of both of my boards are lined up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to square this 3/4 mark across. The reason why I picked a 3/4 mark from the ends is because 3/4 is half of 1.5. So it should put that screw right in the middle of this. This is 1.5 inches wide, 3/4 should put it right in the middle of that, okay? Then my other hole should be here, 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 and here. So that was 1 inch down from the bottom, or 1 inch down from the top, inch up from the bottom, however you want to look at it. Somewhat centered. If you look at that drill bit, where it's a little bit different than a regular drill bit is at the tip here. A regular drill bit obviously is the same all the way down. This drill bit, you can see it's got a cutting edge up here that will help you either countersink or counterbore. So a countersink would sit flush with the top surface of the wood. A counterbore, the head of the screw will sit below the surface of the wood. So I think we'll kind of slightly counterbore all of these, okay? Have to go lefty on this one. Now I can get the clamp out of my way, make this a little easier for myself. You can see that edge where there was something drilled into there before. Again, not perfect. Lumber's been used before. We will still be able to use this and have a good time. Okay. A couple more steps and we'll have this thing put together. We do need some drill holes on the bottom as well here. And, you know, as far as these go, I'll probably go ahead and mark them out on this side because they'll be easier to see since there's no paint on this side. But what we can do with these is they can come in the same thing, 3/4 of an inch from the edge. This is going to be set up like this. When you throw the washers in here, they do sometimes have a tendency to bounce out, and that can be part of the game, and that's all fine if you want it to be like that. Sometimes people put carpet or shelf liner or something like that in the bottom. And if you want to do that, what I think I would do now at this time, like this is shelf liner, what I would do is I would take your shelf liner and I would set it I'd set it down here and make sure it's going to fit. Take a look at it. And you could cut it exactly 16 by 16. You could cut it exactly this size. What I'll probably do is cut it just a little bit smaller than my plywood square, just so it's not hanging out the edges, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it down on the floor here. So I'm cutting it on concrete. And if you look, instead of lining it up perfectly on the corner to corner, like this corner and this corner are lined up perfectly right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it past. So right now, there's maybe 1/4 of an inch here, and the same amount here of my 2x4 hanging off my sheet, or excuse me, of my plywood hanging off my sheet, so that when I cut it, my sheet's going to be a little bit smaller. I'm going to use my utility knife. Be really careful with your razor knife, because if you have a good one, they're really sharp. But I'm gonna set this up on here, and it should be just a little bit short of each edge because I cut it a little bit small because I don't want it to hang out. And it shouldn't be a big deal if it's not perfectly square, because you're not gonna see it because it's gonna be underneath here, sandwiched in between the two boards. If a little bit hangs out, you can probably cut it off with your razor knife later, okay? But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna paint it before I do this part, okay? But the screws that go up from the bottom into the board will sandwich that and hold that in there. That gives you just kind of a little liner for that. When the washers hit on it won't be quite as loud, and then it won't have a tendency to bounce out. So we're gonna paint it, then we'll finish up our assembly. So I'm gonna take a little bit of time. I'm gonna open up my paint. I've got my paintbrush. I'm gonna cut up the second boards for the second part of the project. I'm not gonna have you guys have to watch that or watch the paint dry, although that might be more exciting than everything else you've already seen today. But what we'll do while that's going on is we'll take a short commercial break. We're gonna visit one of our sponsors. Today's program is brought to you in portion by Das Wurst House, where there is always no charge for the polka music. Das Wurst House. Welcome back to Willy's Washers Workshop. You may have a few questions at this time, like, why did Coach Willis change clothes? Why are the washers boxes not painted? And why is Coach Willis holding paint thinner in his hand? Well, none of that is any of your business, and we're ready to move on, putting these things together unpainted. The important thing is that we still have all of our pieces of lumber. We have our framework ready to go. I did go ahead and put one of the washers games together. So all we've got to do is finish up with the second one, and we can get out and we can start playing and having fun. What I want to do first is I want to attach the top to the bottom with my liner paper in between. So what you can do is you can just set your bottom piece down, however, and then you can set your liner on there. However you can get it to work. You may have to attach it to this first with some staples or some tape or something like that, whatever works for you. Or you might be able to get it to set on here. And remember, we made it a little bit small, so hopefully it doesn't go all the way out to each edge. Hopefully it's back a little bit from the edge. And if you needed to trim a little bit, this would be a good time to do that. Once you get that set into place, carefully get your bottom lined up on there. Make sure everything's good. Make sure you're not moving your shelf liner around or the carpet or whatever you used while you did that. I'm going to take a look at it, make sure it looks good from the top. I'm pinching it so it doesn't move. All right, again, that sandwiches that liner in there. Mine bubbles up a little bit because it's airtight. You might have to push yours down a little bit, but it doesn't hang out the edge or anything. And that'll give you just a nice little bit of cushion so your washers don't climb out of there too much. Next, your coffee can, you want to get that centered in there. Okay, I kind of took and made a little punch hole in 4 spots at the bottom to help me get my screws driven in there in the bottom. Getting yours centered in here, if you do what I did, it just happened that if I take 4 2x4 scraps, it pretty much fits right into the middle and puts that in the center, okay? So if you're on a 16x16 box and you use a can of fine coffee like Maxwell House again, that should center it. If you're using something else of a different size, you can eyeball it in there, you can take some measurements and get that figured out, but just try to get it pretty close to the center, okay? Next, what I've got, since my plywood is only a 1/2 inch thick here, I got a 1/2 inch thick screw, but you know, just kind of depends on what you've got. And I'm gonna use 4 of them. And I'm gonna drive these in. So where this screwdriver, power screwdriver, is kind of handy. And the magnetic tip of the bit to get these all in here. And voila! What we have here are 2 washer boxes. That's on there pretty good. We've got those 2. Typically, you play with 4 washers. This is just what I had. A lot of times people play with larger washers. If I had better paint, I would have painted one set. What we did is just took a Sharpie to one set and colored one set blue. I also kind of marked one set with a punch so we can tell which set is which. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna take these out into the backyard and we're gonna put them, I don't know how far apart, we'll just kind of see what feels right. We can look up the rules later and we're gonna try to play a little game. But that is the end of the construction portion of Willy's Washers Workshop. We hope you enjoyed it and we hope you learned something. Thank you.